The settlement on Arcturus 7 was nothing more than a collection of prefab shelters and broken dreams. Katniss had grown up among the debris of humanity's failed expansion, an orphan left behind when the colony transport never returned. At 17, she survived by scavenging the outskirts, trading scraps for nutrient paste, invisible to those who still had family. The day everything changed began like any other, cold, gray, and hopeless. She was picking through the wreckage of an old cargo hauler when she heard the sound, a weak, keening cry that made her freeze. Katniss knew every noise the wasteland made, and this was new, different, alive. Behind a twisted sheet of hull plating, she found them. Two creatures no larger than house cats, covered in iridescent scales that shimmered between copper and gold. They had elongated snouts, membranous wings folded against their bodies, and eyes. Those ancient knowing eyes that locked onto hers with desperate hunger. Dragons, she whispered, though she'd only seen them in the old Earth archives. The draconian species the galactic community called them apex predators, starfaring conquerors. The beings that made even the Krell Armada think twice before entering their territories. These two were dying. Their scales were dull, their breathing shallow. Abandoned? Lost? It didn't matter. Katniss knew what hunger looked like. She'd worn it on her own face for years. Without thinking, she opened her supply pack and pulled out her only meal, a protein bar she'd been saving. She broke it in half, then halves again, and offered the pieces to the trembling cubs. They devoured the food with savage desperation, their tiny claws gripping her fingers. When the protein bar was gone, they looked at her with pleading eyes. Katniss gave them her water ration. Then the dried fruit she'd traded 3 days of scavenging for, then everything else. By the time her pack was empty, she was smiling. Hungry, but smiling. Guess we're all orphans here, she murmured, stroking the scales of the nearest cub. It made a sound like distant thunder, contented. For 3 days, Katniss returned to that spot, bringing whatever food she could find. She went hungry more often than not, her own frame growing thinner as the cubs grew stronger. Their scales began to shine, their wings unfurled properly, and they imprinted on her completely, following her movements with devotion that transcended species. On the 4th day, they were gone. Katniss told herself it was better this way. They were healthy now. They'd found their way home. But the emptiness in her chest felt heavier than hunger ever had. 3 months passed. The settlement grew worse. Supply ships came less frequently. People started disappearing, taking their chances with the smugglers rather than waiting for a rescue that would never come. Katniss was considering the same when the sky caught fire. Ships descended from orbit, hundreds of them. Massive vessels that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, their hulls adorned with scales of living metal. The draconian fleet had arrived at Arcturus 7, and every colonist who could still walk ran for the shelters. Every colonist except Katniss. She stood in the center of the settlement square, transfixed, as the largest ship landed with earth-shaking force. Its boarding ramp descended, and from within emerged a figure that made her heart stop. A draconian in full battle armor stood 9 feet tall, his scales the color of molten bronze, his eyes like miniature suns. Behind him marched an honor guard of warriors, each one a living weapon. But it was the 2 smaller dragons at his side that made Katniss's eyes well with tears. The cubs, now adolescents nearly as large as she was, broke formation and rushed toward her with unbridled joy. They nuzzled against her, their purring shaking her bones, their tongues leaving trails of warmth across her face. The bronze warrior approached, and when he spoke, his voice resonated with the weight of authority. I am Commander Jackson of the 5th Talon Fleet. These are my sons Ember and Ash. He gestured to the cubs. 3 months ago they were lost during a reconnaissance mission, shot down by raiders presumed dead. But they survived, found by a human orphan who gave them everything she had even when she had nothing. Katniss couldn't speak. The entire settlement had emerged from hiding, watching in stunned silence. Jackson knelt, bringing his massive head level with hers. The draconian code is absolute. A life debt must be repaid. But this, what you did goes beyond debt. You fed our young when you yourself were starving. You showed them kindness when our species has shown yours only indifference. He stood, his voice carrying across the settlement. I hereby claim Katniss as kin of the 5th Talon Fleet. She is under our protection now and forever. Any who harm her harm us all." The colonists gasped. Protection of a draconian fleet meant immunity, resources, status. It meant salvation, but Jackson wasn't finished. Furthermore, this settlement is now under fleet jurisdiction. We will provide food, medical supplies, and passage off-world for any who wish it. This is not charity, this is honor. He turned back to Katniss. And you, daughter of my son's savior, will never hunger again. You will have a place among us if you choose, or we will provide you anything you need to forge your own path. The choice is yours. Katniss looked at the cubs, Ember and Ash, who watched her with those ancient, knowing eyes. She thought of all the nights she'd gone hungry, all the times she'd been invisible, forgotten. "I choose," she said, her voice steady for the first time in years, "to be seen." Jackson's expression softened into something that might have been a smile. "Then you shall be. Welcome home, Katniss." As the fleet began distributing supplies and the colonists wept with relief, Katniss stood between two dragon cubs and realized the truth that humanity had always known, but sometimes forgot. Kindness, even in the smallest measure, could move mountains, or in this case, an entire dragon fleet. The galaxy would remember the day an orphan girl's compassion rewrote the relationship between two species. And in the years to come, when humans and draconians forged their unprecedented alliance, they would point to this moment, to Katniss, who fed two hungry cubs when she had every reason not to, as the beginning of everything. Some called it luck. Others called it destiny. Katniss called it being human, and that in the end was enough.